And welcome back to Chicago Bulls Insider. Today, we're talking about Patrick Williams being listed as one of the worst contracts in the NBA. We're going to be doing a little buy or sell on that. Next, we're going to be talking about a hypothetical trade that would send Patrick Williams over to the Milwaukee Bucks in exchange for Kyle Kuzma. And so before we go ahead and we jump into it, I first want to remind you to slam dunk on that subscribe button. Just like Modest Bazelis slam dunks in games. And so in exchange for slamming on that subscribe button, I'm going to give you nothing but daily content around the Chicago Bulls. Make sure that you hit that like, you hit that subscribe, and you join the Chicago Bulls Insider family as we talk nothing but Chicago Bulls basketball. And so with that being said, let's jump into it as we are going to start off with a little bit of a buy or sell on Patrick Williams having one of the worst contracts in the NBA. And so if you've not got a chance to see this came out 9 days ago, and this was on Bleacher Report, and Patrick Williams is listed as the 5th worst contract in the NBA. And so let's go ahead and jump into what was said about Patrick Williams. And so before we jump into my buy or sell, I want to start with the positives first with Patrick Williams. And so first, take a look here at the average percentage of the salary cap. And so right now on this list, Patrick Williams has the lowest at 10.14. In fact, when you look at the rest of the names on this list, if you take a look at this article, and I'm starting from the 8th and going down here, they have Karl Anthony Towns at 33.51 on the average percent of the salary cap. Next, you have Jamal Murray at 30. Then after that, you have Jeremy Grant at 20.09. Then after that, you have Patrick Williams here at 10.14. Then you have Jaylen Brown at 33.02. Next, Paul George at 31.82. And you have Embiid here at 35.05. Next, you had Bradley Beal at 34.14. And obviously that has changed since he got bought out here by the Phoenix Suns. And so that is the positive part here, is that the average percentage of the salary cap is not that high. And that just leads you to believe that it's something that is not going to really tie up the Chicago Bulls salary cap, which is a good thing. We've talked about this a lot, that as the salary cap is going to go up, it's not necessarily the salary that Patrick Williams is making. That's not going to be the issue. And the next thing that I want to go into with Patrick Williams, and I'll give him some credit here, out of everybody that is on this list, Patrick Williams still has the most upside. So he's just 23 years old, and there is still a chance to where he can find something here, with all the talent that he obviously has. He just hasn't been able to put it together. And so you've got to give Patrick Williams that credit. Now, with that being said, on the buy or the sell part here, I'm actually buying this at this point. Now, I'm not sure if I necessarily buy the ranking. I think that if we dig a little bit deeper, we probably maybe can find, some more contracts to throw out there. And so I think that Patrick Williams is definitely on a contract that is not looking good here. And let's start with the fact that with Patrick Williams, really, it's got worse with Patrick Williams when you look at just what happened last season with him. In fact, when we take a look at the numbers, you see a player that once he came off this 5-year, $90 million signing that he had, it just really didn't start off well, because you see that the points went down from a season ago. You see that the steals went down as well, where he was at 0.8 from the 0.9. The rebounds went down. And you see that the three-point percentage, in fact, went down with him as well. So 39.9% down to 35.3. You also see that the field goal percentage dropped 44.3 to 39.7. The free throw percentage from 78.8% down to 72.3%. The only thing that really went up, and it was slightly, was the assist to 2, up from 1.5. Then when you look at the games played, 63 games played, and he only started 36 games. And so that is big right there, because Patrick Williams, ultimately what happened is he got benched. That's the bottom line. And I remember talking about this going into the season last year, that when I looked at Modest Buzelis in the summer league, there was something about the way that Modest Buzelis competed that I was like, he is showing me something that really this is what we've wanted to see out of Patrick Williams. It's that grit, it's that fight, and we just haven't seen that. And with Modest Buzelis, he showed that, and he continues to show that, and he has not looked back. And so I think the issue here with Patrick Williams is that the value of the contract is going to continue to go down unless he turns it around. I think that it's pretty clear that the Chicago Bulls have tried to go out there and invest in him. They've moved people out of the way, so there's no Zach LaVine on the roster anymore. There's no DeMar DeRozan. There's no Alex Caruso. Like, that was one of the things that was out there with Patrick Williams, and the fact that he needed a little bit more runway. And so I thought that the runway was as clear as it possibly could have been for him to be out there and really make an impact with this offense. The offense changed to where it was more up and down tempo. He's a three-point shooter, and he wasn't able to capitalize off of that. In fact, when you look at the games played for Patrick Williams, he didn't break 20 points until game 79 against the Cleveland Cavaliers there. So 21 points in game 79. And so the fact that he was not able to get it done till there. Then when you look at the injuries, I thought just coming into the season last year, when we saw the reports about him having a setback, but then when he got to camp, they were saying, hey, no, he's good. He's been playing fives and everything else. I thought it was interesting because we had saw where Zach LaVine was playing fives. We saw the footage. We saw the footage with Lonzo Ball and everything else. I didn't see any footage with Patrick Williams. And so I was wondering about that. And then as the season went along, I believe he did have to sit out a little bit due to the foot. And so, it was a tough season. And I just think the bottom line here is that I'm buying this right now. And I hope that he can turn this around as far as, making this something where it is not the worst contract in the NBA. And let me say this about Patrick Williams. When you look at a guy like Bradley Beal, you look at a guy like Embiid, you look at a guy like Paul George, it's not like Patrick Williams has a no trade clause on his contract. I get the fact that he does have a player option. That's fair. I understand that, but he doesn't have a no trade clause. And once again, it's not a situation where you look at this and go, man, he is tying up a lot of money to the Chicago Bulls. That's not the case. I think what the issue is going to be is that the Chicago Bulls are continuing to bring in players now with Modest Buzelis. You got Noah Asenge. You went out there and you've got Isaac Okoro. And so now these players can come in, they can excel. And then what happens is that they may be wanting to get Patrick Williams out there, but because these players are taking off, essentially you have a roster spot here with Patrick Williams, and you're not going to have a trade partner because it's going to be difficult, I think, to really increase his trade value because he just hasn't been able to put it together. And then now we were just talking about the situation where players were moved and things like that, and he had a runway. Now you're adding players that have come in that were much younger in the same team and everything else and just have taken off. And so this is where it begins to be a situation where, yes, it could become one of the worst when you look back at it, because if you want Patrick Williams to be a role player, that's fine. But the bottom line is he's been below an average role player at this point in time. So anyway, you guys let me know in the comments if you're buying or selling the fact that Patrick Williams has one of the worst contracts in the NBA. Next, I wanted to go ahead and jump into a hypothetical trade because I think that this is something that is talked about a lot with Patrick Williams and the possibility of trading him. And let me start by saying this. I think it's going to be very difficult unless it really increases his play on the court, and it's all up to Patrick Williams at this point in time. And so I did get a chance to see this. This has been in a couple of articles. I've also just heard about this around just Chicago Bulls content creators here. But it's a hypothetical trade that would send Kyle Kuzma over for Patrick Williams here. And so when we take a look at this in the trade finder, it is something that absolutely works. When you look at the salary and the situation, you will see that actually Kuzma here is coming in. He's owed right around $43.6 million, I believe. And so he has 2 years. And he's at 29 years old. And then the Milwaukee Bucks would get Patrick Williams. Obviously, he has 4 years left at $72 million. And so would I consider doing this type of deal? I think that this is something that maybe you do consider. And I think that if you're going to do a one-for-one type of swap, I think that this is something that, honestly, looking at the front office and how they operate, I could see that this would be something that they could explore. And here's why. Because with AK in the front office, the one thing that they are not trying to do is they're not trying to tank. They're not trying to do that, and they're trying to win right now. And what does a move do like that when you go out there and you get a guy like Kyle Kuzma? That immediately keeps you competitive. And I think that that is something that AK would like. You're looking at a player that he still does fit your timeline in the sense that he's under 30. And I think that even with just the 2 years and him being over 30, it still would fit, I think, a bit of your timeline here with what AK is building. And you're talking about 2 years left on the deal. And I think that with what Kyle Kuzma would bring, he's going to be a player that certainly is going to score the basketball. I know that this wasn't the best year for him with the Milwaukee Bucks. In fact, when you take a look at the numbers, I mean, you'll see a player that can give you the 14.8 points a game, just 0.6 with the steals, 2.3 with the assists, 5.7 with the rebounds. You see a player that struggled shooting the three ball at 30.7% and just 43.6% from the field. But again, this keeps you competitive. And I think that there is a way that you can mix Kyle Kuzma into this and him not get in the way necessarily. And you can always look at this like this. If Kyle Kuzma comes in and he recovers, I think, a bit of his trade value, which I think is something he could do with the Chicago Bulls, then if the Chicago Bulls are thinking about opportunities, they could actually flip him maybe to a playoff contender or something like that, and maybe get something back that way, hopefully some draft capital or something like that. And so I think that it could be a win-win type of situation. This would get you off of Patrick Williams, but I just don't think that this is something that I think the Milwaukee Bucks would be looking for at this point when you look at their side of the thing, because when they go out there and they sign Miles Turner, they cut Dame Lillard, and then you pair that with Giannis. They've gone out, they've re-signed Bobby Portis and everything else. I think that this team very much is in a win-now situation. And I'm not sure that they would want to invest into Patrick Williams, who's still trying to find his way. I could see this maybe if he were, on a consistent rhythm, showing these things like that. Obviously, we probably wouldn't even be talking about this, but I'd say there might be some more interest. But for a player that has really been up and down like that, I'm not sure that the Milwaukee Bucks would want to take a chance here. And so anyway, you guys let me know in the comments, is this a buy or sell? Is this a deal that you would consider? Once again, this is a hypothetical trade, something that I have seen out there around the Bulls as just far as not necessarily the rumor mill, but it has been talked about. So you can just go ahead, type it in, and you'll be able to see the articles pull up about this. So you guys let me know there. And also, too, let me know what you're thinking here about Patrick Williams, and does he have one of the worst contracts in the NBA? I'd love to hear what you guys are thinking. Once again, you can go over to Bleacher Report and read this. Let me know what your thoughts are here. And as we always say, look, go Bulls, and I will see you on the next one. Peace.